Welcome to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning, everybody.
This is our EV podcast that we do every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. And if you're chiming in from various parts of the world, please let us know where you're coming in from. Our audience always likes to see the kind of penetration that we have on this globe with these podcasts. And if you disagree with anything we say, please let us know. It's fine. We're looking for opinions. We're looking for collaboration, and yeah, for some inputs from our audience.
Honestly, there's nothing more fun to me than having somebody who has a reasonable argument that disagrees with us.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the arguments that our people come up with when they disagree, actually, they're pretty reasonable arguments. They might not be what I would agree with or think is right, but hey, they make the show fun and exciting. That's for sure.
One of the things I've learned, if somebody presents a more compelling argument for something, I have been known to change my mind on something as well.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
I like to use the term "I'm open to be influenced."
Good. So the image behind us actually was a recycled one. We used this one last week on our Gruber Power Services podcast, and the theme there was data centers and hurricanes. And since we're covering some hurricane reporting today, we thought we'd reuse this. The only thing wrong with this AI image is that it is a hurricane image taken from space. If it was laying flatter, it probably would be more convincing, but uh, maybe no one noticed that. Maybe I shouldn't have mentioned that.
I don't know. Overall, it looks very compelling. Our thoughts and prayers are going to be with the people in the Tampa community that the Hurricane Milton seems to be aiming for. They haven't had a hurricane in the Tampa St. Petersburg area hit them directly in over 100 years.
Is that right? I did not know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have customers, of course, in Florida, and a few of them, will talk about the fact that this isn't a great place to live anymore because of all of the destruction and damage that takes place. Now that these guys are getting a double whammy like this, I'll bet you there's some people that are going to be relocating.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. I remember early in my career going to an office that we had in the Tampa area, and at the time you have all these cottages and restaurants and shopping and everything right on the water. And the comment that was made to me when I was kind of inquiring about it, they said, "Yeah, we haven't taken a direct hurricane hit, and at the time it was about 70 years." And they said, "Yeah, eventually, when the next big hurricane comes, this will all be gone. It'll take another 30 or 40 years to build up, and it'll happen eventually."
Yeah.
They said they're just waiting for the day.
Yeah. And of course, they used to relocate to places like ours here, but we've had 110 now for what, 60 some odd days?
It's over 70 days now. And yeah, on Sunday, 2 days ago, we hit 113. Yesterday, we hit 110. This is October, people.
We are breaking records daily, and I mean breaking them in a spectacular way. One of them was, I think it was Sunday, we had 113.
Yeah.
The last record was 107, and it was like 1920 or something like
Oh,
that,
yeah.
100
Yeah.
years plus.
Yeah. And it's, I am officially crying mercy that temperatures can go down now.
Right. So one of the headlines we have here is regarding it has to do with the hurricanes in Florida. Tesla is prepared to deploy mobile superchargers in the areas affected by Hurricane Milton, which now is the second one. We had Helene 1st, and now we've got Milton that's creating devastation. Tesla has shared a number of reminders to their customers in preparation for the arrival of this 150-mile Milton hurricane. And most notably, they say that you want to prepare for this arrival by charging your vehicle to 100% if you're able to do so at this
Right.
point. They also recommend using your car's infotainment system or Tesla app to see live updates about the supercharger network. And the supercharger network, of course, will be affected by this devastation. So what Tesla has done is actually begun to deploy mobile supercharging stations. These are powered by their Megapack batteries, and in the areas most affected by this Category 4 storm. Um, I'm always pleased when I see businesses participate, go out of their way, and help those that are affected by this. And this isn't new to Tesla. I don't know if you remember, many years ago, there was an issue of some kids that were trapped in a mine, and they couldn't get to them. And Tesla, actually, Elon, developed a submarine. Flew it all the way out there to try to, access. Now they were
I remember
unsuccessful.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's and then during COVID, they were actually taking some of their engineering teams to make respirators. Do you
Hmm.
remember that?
I do.
Yeah. This is not how typical corporate America responds. They kind of leave it to the federal government or FEMA to take care of these kinds of disasters. So again, a shout out to Tesla. Good job.
And I love seeing how Tesla is leveraging their technology for good, telling people, hey, your car is going to have power. It's going to be its own independent power system and source, and it's going to have availability to access the Tesla network.
Mhm.
So watch your car's infotainment system. We'll send alerts that way.
Yeah.
That way you can know what's going on. That's incredible. I'm so happy to see that.
Wayne Levitt joined us. He says, "Hi guys, welcome." And then Easy EV says, "A friend of mine in Sarasota had 2 feet of water in his house for Helena, and in North Carolina, and he's back in the eye of the storm. I hope it turns out okay."
I do too. That's he makes a good point there too. A lot of people were that are going to be terribly affected by Milton have already been affected by Helene,
Mhm.
and they're trying to recover.
One of the most innovative things that I saw just recently, last couple of days or so, was a large plastic bag, pretty thick mill,
Hmm.
that they would actually drive the car onto, bring up the sides, and then tie it on top. So the inevitable storm surges and water that would get into their garage, during these storms. The thinking was that this would protect the cars, and none of this brackish water would get into the battery pack because the car was basically dry in a plastic bag.
I hope that we find out if that works or not for some of these cars.
Yeah.
That would be absolutely amazing.
And if you think about the cost involved, even if you got a real heavy mill bag and you had, a company come out and take care of that for you, it's infinitely cheaper than the loss you would suffer by having a total loss car. And
Oh yeah.
potentially a fire, because remember, you get salt water into a lithium ion battery pack and you're beginning to move electrons around, and heat builds up, and quite possible that fires occur from this.
I think that's a wonderful idea. So I'm hoping for the best for those. I hope we can get some stories about the successes from those plastic bags. It's unfortunate that they're even needed.
Yeah. So these portable megapack powered mobile superchargers apparently were initially spotted by the electric vehicle community in November of 2019. At the time, the EV owners were pleasantly surprised to see a trailer loaded with megapack batteries in 8 urban supercharger stalls in San Luis Obispo at the Madonna Inn supercharger. Remember, that's where just a few months ago there was another Tesla takeover.
Right.
Same site. A couple months prior to that, the Tesla takeover was in Austria, Flachau, Austria, which I attended, by the way.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, they say that these mobile superchargers are deployed to help customers who were traveling for the holidays, such as Thanksgiving back then. Now, there's of course a different reason for deploying them. The rate of charge. They say the Tesla owners who charged their vehicles at the mobile supercharger reported that the setup was able to provide peak rates of up to 125 kW. That's probably better than some of the superchargers.
That's equivalent to their second generation supercharger. The second gen superchargers in best case can do 150 kilowatts. Um, Most cars reach that and sustain that for a very short time.
Mhm.
So for a person that has an 85 kilowatt battery, you're talking a 20% to 80% charge in somewhere around 30 minutes.
Mhm. Plenty fast enough. They say it remains to be seen if Tesla has improved the output of its Megapack powered mobile superchargers since then, but even 125 kW charging during times of emergency could prove life saving.
It really could. I also tried to do some research to find out how big these mega packs might be. We know it's a big battery sitting on a semi tractor trailer, and these batteries are probably the 4 megawatt mega packs that Tesla uses commonly with utilities. Now, that would be enough electricity stored in that mega pack to fully charge 40 100 kilowatt batteries from 0 to 100%.
Hmm.
So you, over the course of a day, they may be able to charge somewhere upwards of 80 to 100 cars before the mega pack itself would be depleted. I would think that what they would do is be potentially rotate a couple of them in a site. So you have a mega pack here for a day, then that night, as everyone shuts down for the evening, they roll that one up to where there's electricity 100 miles or so away, bring another trailer in, the next thing goes on the next day.
And replenish and recharge. Sure. Sure. Yeah, fascinating technology that we have. Um, Only one seven God joined us. He says, "Are we finding a better way of recycling batteries?" If you're asking about in general, the old lead acid batteries were not very planet friendly. You had a
Right.
number of chemicals in there, sulfuric acid. You had a lot of lead in those, and then of course the plastic that you had to deal with. The nice part about these new lithium ion, lithium iron type cells, the multi cell type, they're almost 100% recyclable. And for infinity, they
Right.
continuously, it's like a closed loop system. So we've never seen anything like that in the recycling business. And the companies like Redwood Materials, iCycle here in town, um, this is the type of work that they do. And they end up being high grade ore. And if they build one of these recycling centers next to a big manufacturing facility that makes EVs, then you've also reduced the carbon footprint because you're not hauling this stuff. The brine ponds in Bolivia, South America,
Right.
and the overland travel route through using these, and then the ships that have to bring them to the to North America and then overland again. Um, so yes, the answer is there are much better ways of recycling batteries these days. Avi Mundra, 85, says Clearwater Beach is going to be gone. So scary.
It really is. Again, our hopes and prayers are that everybody's able to either get out or be safe. Um, just, we don't want to see any more loss of life.
And Niels is chiming in. He says latest forecast says 100 to 110 mile an hour at Tampa, so it's weakening at least. We occasionally here in Arizona, we don't get tornadoes, but we get what are called microbursts occasionally. And these are pretty powerful. They'll take down telephone poles and, of course, uproot trees and take roofs off of houses. I know I was the victim of that a couple of times,
Yeah,
actually. And we're talking about 80 to 120 mile an hour winds. What is a 150 mile per hour wind capable of, if you think about it?
absolutely. And we're also talking about these 80 to 120 mile an hour winds for 15 minutes,
Yeah. Yeah.
20 minutes, and they can do tremendous damage in a very short time. Um, for the hurricane like this, you may be talking about a swath of as much as 60 or 70 miles wide, having these winds sustained with higher gusts for several hours.
Yeah.
It's really truly frightening to think about.
Absolutely. So another headline here: Starlink cellular temporarily deployed in areas hit by Helene. Now, Jesse and I were theorizing about this. With a direct cellular link to a satellite,
Hmm.
our cell tower is important anymore. And we'll get into that in a moment here. But the way this article reads is SpaceX and T Mobile partnered, temporarily deploying Starlink direct cellular to help Hurricane Helene recovery efforts in the affected area. Obviously, the infrastructure is pretty much decimated in those areas.
Right.
And I can't imagine even a cell tower could, survive something like that. So the FCC, the U.S. Federal Communications Commission, granted SpaceX and T-Mobile temporary authority to provide coverage through Starlink direct to cellular to cell phones in these areas affected by the devastating Category 4 hurricanes. The satellites have already been enabled and started broadcasting emergency alerts to cell phones on all the networks in North Carolina. In addition, they say we may test basic texting services capabilities for most cell phones on the T-Mobile network in North Carolina. And SpaceX's direct-to-cell constellation has not yet been fully deployed, so all services will be delivered on a best effort basis. Probably some latency issues, and you're not going to get connectivity all the time. They say that Hurricane Helene, which preceded Milton, of course, and has already done most of its damage or all of its damage, it included several states in the United States: North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. It wasn't very selective, was it?
No.
They say that North Carolina was the hardest hit, with 116 reported deaths from 232, some of which are still missing.
Yeah, I've spoken to some people who were some in Georgia and some in North Carolina, and because I have some friends in that area, and they've said that the challenge with Hurricane Helene was not that it was a super strong storm, but it was much stronger than expected. The forecasts until just a day or two before Helene hit were that Helene was going to come in slower and it would weaken far more quickly. And by the time it hit Georgia and North Carolina and South Carolina, that it would be nothing more than either a tropical storm or tropical depression. So nobody up there was prepared for a hurricane going fast because it was running at about 25 miles an hour, where a normal hurricane will go at a somewhat slower speed, and staying and keeping its hurricane strength all the way up into the northern Carolinas.
Interesting. Yeah. They say that while SpaceX's direct to cell constellation has not yet been fully deployed, they felt that getting this early test version into the hands of people on the ground could provide vital support as teams work to get the infrastructure and services back online. Um, they did mention how many SpaceX satellites are currently deployed, and 192 of them that are around Earth's orbit. Starlink Cellular also reportedly needs around 300 of these to offer complete services in the United States. They also estimate that the beta tests for a long-term version of this could start by the end of this year or early 2025.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So, what are the limitations of cell to satellite service? My first question was, does it work in conjunction with the cell towers?
Right?
And it turns out it really doesn't need those. They say that satellite to cell service is a technology that allows satellites to directly communicate with the mobile phones without any intervention from cell towers,
Incredible.
completely bypassing cell towers. Now, while it has a potential to enhance mobile connectivity, especially in remote or underserved areas, there are several reasons why it will not replace cell towers at this point in time. And the reasons for that is limited bandwidth and capacity. Turns out satellites have a limited bandwidth compared to terrestrial cell towers. This means that while they can provide coverage in areas where cell towers are not feasible, they cannot handle the same volume of traffic or offer the same high speeds that cell towers can, especially in heavily populated areas. Then they say, think of it this way. There are tens of thousands of satellites, but millions of cell towers across the globe. I didn't realize there were that many.
Yeah.
In the US, nearly 60 to 70% of towers are fed by fiber. And want proof? Just read the reviews of Starlink service and overcapacity issues.
It totally makes sense to me. I'm sure you have seen instances where a cell tower, you have a big tower and 6 antennas on top. Pretty soon it's a big tower and 12 antennas on top. Pretty soon it's a big tower and 12 antennas on top and a different network that is leasing space on that same tower and has put 18 more antennas under it.
Right.
Um, and that what that is, so these cell towers are just simply increasing exponentially in their capacity. You can't do that with a satellite.
Yeah. And, we have a cell tower in our backyard here at
Hmm.
the Gruber Motor or at the Gruber Company's compound. Unfortunately, it's not on our land.
Yeah.
And I say unfortunately because the building that it's attached to currently, or the land that it's on, is being sold. And you could make a strong argument that with that around $4,000 per month in lease charges for that cell tower, that pays for over half of this particular building. It's only 6,000 square feet.
Yeah.
But the owners of the building see a gold rush there, and they're going to keep that little piece of land that the cell tower is on. The other thing that's interesting about our cell tower in the backyard, the crows have taken up residence again.
Oh, they have.
We had a big nest 2 years ago. You could hear them up there cawing and crowing, and the rest of the birds, of course, were terribly upset because they're predators,
Of course.
and they had their own little nests. And every once in a while, you'd hear some mommy bird somewhere just complain bitterly and fly around the crow as it was raiding its nest.
And that's all they could do is just kind of fly around and be
Right.
annoying. Some other things on these on these satellites, in addition to bandwidth and latency, um, not all mobile devices are compatible with satellite service, Delta satellite service. Especially older cell phones, anything more than about 4 years old is going to have issues. And you've got the very logical physical limitation of battery. It takes more energy to connect a telephone to a device 6 miles away, i.e., a satellite in low Earth orbit, than it does to connect a radio antenna to a device that's 1 mile away, which is a cell tower.
Interesting. Okay.
And so you can use up your phone battery much more quickly if you have to connect to satellites.
Yeah, they talk about the latency issues and describe things that you won't be able to do, at least initially, with this direct satellite to cell connection is video calls, FaceTime, and online gaming. But at the same time, we all know that technology is improving exponentially, and looks like it could be the future.
Well, I like the idea, and again, kudos to Elon Musk and his companies. They're going to save lives with this.
Oh yeah.
The ability for somebody to send a text message of help and provide some sort of geolocation of their phone is going to lead rescuers to people much more quickly and have the ability to save lives that might have otherwise been lost.
So Niels is saying, why are there still low voltage power lines in the air in your country? It makes for unreliable everything, and it doesn't fit a developed country. Well, um, most of the new developments, the housing developments, do have underground high voltage, paths, usually around 13,000 volts. But we have so much old infrastructure here, not like Europe, mind you, where we're talking about, hundreds of years. We still have telephone poles, and it's
Yeah.
just not cost effective to rip those out to, create a better aesthetic.
It's hard to to make a mental image, but especially here in the Western United States, we think of nothing. A trip to Flagstaff, 140 miles. A trip to Los Angeles, 350 miles. That's nothing.
Mhm.
But what's the distance between Paris and Berlin?
Yeah, yeah,
It's what, 450, 500 miles. That's a small portion of what we have in the United States. And we have large swaths of land, especially across the central and western US, where it is simply too rural to be able to afford the power infrastructure. In fact, I remember hearing this last year about a grant given to the Navajo Nation so that they can get electricity to 500 new homes that have never had electricity before.
right.
And here we're talking 2020. We're still building out the basic infrastructure of power poles and aerial lines.
Yeah. And it's a sad statement, folks. The Native Americans in this country have typically gotten a raw deal.
Yeah.
The amount of infrastructure that's available to them is nowhere near what it is in the other urban areas. However, as soon as Indian gaming was allowed, those things are changing,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of cash flowing into those casinos, which is gratefully being distributed amongst the tribal members.
It has changed the lives of countless people in the tribes, and I hope for the best for them. To Niels's point, though, um, our hope is that over time we can get that infrastructure improved. It is basically a dollars and cents thing.
Yeah.
We just have a lot more space that we're having to put lines
Mhm.
in order to accommodate it.
So here's an article, Mark, and I'm going to defer to you on this one. Tesla to raise 783 million with the sale of prime auto leases. This is according to a Bloomberg article.
Yeah, I took a little bit of trying to figure out what in the heck is going on. Why would Tesla need debt? Well, here's what's happening. Tesla is set to raise additional funding by selling debt that's backed by automotive leases. And there's a report that says that the debt price uh, sale could occur as soon as the end of the week, this next week.
Mhm.
On Thursday of this last week, Bloomberg reported that Tesla is already pre-marketing a $783 million debt sale. Now, it's backed by leases from prime borrowers, and I'll get back to that in a minute. That's actually quite important. Citing a person familiar with the matter who wants to remain anonymous. The sale is reportedly being led by a French firm, Societe Generale, and it's expected to be officially priced by this next week. Bloomberg also explains that Tesla is priced a $750 million deal, along with a 5.53% coupon on its top tranche. Here's what this means. On a balance sheet, companies have cash, and then companies have cash equivalent securities. They're both assets, they're both very much like cash. The difference is what we call liquidity. Anything that you can convert into dollars and cents and spend within 30 days is considered to be liquid. Anything that is not able to be converted into dollars and cents and spent within 30 days is considered to have some sort of illiquidity. It has to be converted into dollars and cents cash before it could be spent. Tesla has a bunch of leases where they're getting regular payments from prime credit customers, so people who have leases at low interest rates that Tesla has chosen to keep the debt because of its high chance of collectability. That's why the prime is there. And so they've got these payments coming in. Well, that's not liquid. It's cash-like because it's cash, but it's not cash-like because it's coming in the future.
Okay.
So if Tesla says, I'm going to take all of that lease income money that's coming in over the next 3 years, we know how much it is, we know what kind of interest rates it is. We're going to take a 5% discount on all that money so we can get it today. It's actually pretty common in the auto industry, especially. But there are a number of companies, any company that does financing may take and sell that financing through an instrument like this. And they'll take a discount to have the money today because they believe they can get better use out of the funds. In other words, they can make more money by having it today than they can by letting it sit in an interest-bearing account and come in over 3 years. So it's all about leveraging your cash flow and using it in a way that helps you make more money.
According to the article here, it says that last year alone, Tesla securitizations totaled around 4 billion,
Yeah,
and that Ford, for example, priced a $1.7 billion deal just this Thursday,
right.
last week.
Yeah, so this is a tool that actually gets used pretty commonly in the automotive industry, and it's a way for these big companies. You've heard of GM Finance and Ford Auto Finance, and
Mhm.
it's these auto finance arms that they, frankly, they're the cash cows of these automakers. They'll sell their autos at near cost, and they're counting on making all this money from interest. And if they ever need to have a big boatload of money brought in for any reason whatsoever, so they think usually it's that they think they have an opportunity to do better than the interest that they can make from letting the financing go through,
Mhm.
then they'll sell it. They'll get the money now and they'll reinvest it into inventory or things like margins.
So Niels is saying our phone and power lines, and he's in Denmark, by the way, were dug down in the 60s. So no one has power supplies and power failure is practically headline news. The other thing that I found traveling Europe, Niels, is they have so much right of way, public transport, the trains, for example. Um, Everywhere we went, the boys love trains.
Hmm.
They put little rocks on the track and all of that, right?
Oh, yeah. Who
But
hasn't put a penny on a track and hoped that the train would run over it?
right. But what I found is that they had fiber enclosures or fiber paths, channels, and ducts,
Hmm.
and that was for the infrastructure. Now it makes perfect sense because those rail paths typically drive between major metropolitan areas.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to dig or you don't have to have right of way type issues or buy land in order to put the infrastructure in. So we don't have as much of that kind of mass transit here, Neil. So it's more difficult here in the United States to take advantage of these existing pathways that crisscross Europe.
Well, and thinking back in the United States, you look at what we have in our history, places like the Tennessee Valley Authority, huge power generating infrastructure. The Hoover Dam, the Grand Coulee Dam up in the northwestern U.S. So all kinds of hydroelectric power. Um, Much of this infrastructure was built and put in place between 1930 and 1960. And those are just the power generating stations. That means that much of rural America didn't have power of any kind until as late as Lyndon Johnson's administration in the mid 1960s. Um, so to Niels, to your point, we're just behind the curve as a nation.
Yeah.
But it's the size of our nation that has really caused that to happen more than anything.
Sure. We have a new capability, by the way, that I want to test. And I'm going to throw up an image here, Jesse. And this is the Tesla mobile charging station that we spoke about earlier. I forgot that we can pop up
Oh
images from my
yeah.
screen onto your screen. So let's see how it works. This is one of those mega packs that's sitting on a trailer that I actually already have mine
Move it to your other
expanded.
screen.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, okay, so that's how we do it. So in the future, folks, I'll be able to bring up images on my screen and even move my mouse. So I can say, oh, it looks like Franz von Holzhausen right there, which it's not, of course, but
Yeah.
that would be great. And so, yeah, new capability, and I'm looking forward to the production boost that we have. Um, so it looks like we're coming to the close of our half-hour podcast. Is there anything else that you want to cover, Mark?
Um, I don't think of anything else at this point in time. I know we've said this a couple times during our podcast here, but I can't say it enough. Be safe, everybody in Florida.
Yeah.
Take that storm seriously. It's a big storm. I'm sure that this next week we'll be hearing the stories of what happened in the storm, and hopefully there won't be any loss of life.
And remember, in 2 days, October 10th, is the big Tesla RoboTaxi unveiling. A lot of secrecy and hype surrounding this one. And but what they're starting to hint now is that, and they're very light on details, but there may be 3 new vehicles unveiled at this event Thursday. We do not yet know what time during the day. We've even thought about broadcasting live during the unveiling, and we'll see how convenient that is. But what they're talking about is the 3 vehicles or 3 models that are suspected as going to be released as a robo van, a robo taxi, and a $25,000 EV that investors have been thinking about for many years for Tesla.
If that $25,000 EV comes out, it's going to send the price through the roof. Um, they're The skeptics are out there in force when it comes to the robotaxi. They just feel like the FSD isn't there yet, and you've got other companies such as Waymo, that are further ahead than Tesla in this area. So Tesla's going to have some catching up to do.
Well, we'll be back next week for another edition of the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner.